There aren't that many occasions where you encounter a 100,000 seat space. I think there's only 11 in the world.
I think we were contracted late November, early December, and so that was basically then a 12-month build. We had to be finished by the following December, ready for the Boxing Day test. So it was pretty quick to push through that sort of amount of revenue in a short period of time. We'd only ever done one project of that revenue size before, a Melbourne Convention Centre, but that was probably over about 3 years rather than 1 year. We took advantage of the cricket season because there's a lot less going on during cricket than there is during the football season. So that sort of January, February period, we really hit it hard and tried to get a lot of cable in while we didn't have the disruptions.
The geometry of the MCG is complex. It's two halves, northern half, southern half. The southern half of the roof is 8 metres or 9 metres lower than the northern half. The geometry is quite different. In a modern venue where you can chop the stadium in half and then chop it in half in the other axis, whatever you do in one quarter can be flipped and mirrored. Great. The MCG doesn't work that way. Normally the bowl in a stadium environment accounts for 60 or 70% of the budget of a stadium sound system. In the case of the MCG, it was about 40, because there's so much more in that particular building, in concourses, restaurants, bars, conferencing facilities, meeting rooms. I'd already spent 6 months in the building doing the Commonwealth Games, and I had no idea there were that many spaces in that building.
We got stuck into it pretty early. Obviously there was a lot of design work to do, particularly around the rigging and hanging of the clusters from the roof. There was a major design change there because the original design had the clusters in almost like in a production sense, that they were hung on winches and could be flown out quite quickly. And from what I understand, that was based around the need to drop them quickly in the case of a 100-year wind event. However, I think the engineers who look after the roof determined that that wasn't necessary. We had an existing system that we put in there in 2003 to 2005, and that was all hung immediately adjacent to the catwalks. But, for optimum performance, obviously Scott wanted it out as far as it could go out on the roof, which is fairly inaccessible as far as any rigging points or access by a person. Where some of our early sort of draft options that looked like they were going to work, once we calculated the weight of them, the engineers, Oricon, deemed that they were going to be too heavy. So we had to come up with a method by which we had enough structure in there to hold it up, but it was light enough that it was going to pull the roof down in a big wind.
It wasn't straightforward because there were so many levels, and if you've been in a stadium before, acoustically the worst seats are the under balcony seats. And when you have a stadium that's so layered, loads of seats are under balcony seats. What our client wanted was to deliver a great experience to everybody. So we can't just ignore the under balconies and pretend that they're going to be fine. So what do? You treat every single space like its own venue. So there's 57 subs in the under balcony on level 1 sub per bay. So every bay of the under balcony has 8 full range loudspeakers and a sub per bay, and there's 57 bays. That in itself is a stadium loudspeaker system, and it's just doing level 1 under balconies.
The under balconies were a bit of a challenge too, because whilst in some areas what we were doing was installing the new systems while the existing system was still operating. However, when it came to the under balconies, this wasn't really possible because A, the speakers and cabling would have been on top of each other, and B, it wasn't going to be efficient for us to get scaffolding up there to put new systems in and then go and put the scaffolding up again later on to pull the old out. So we ended up decommissioning and installing several bays of under balcony speakers in the period between one weekend's football and the next weekend's football. So a Monday morning we'd get in there, they set the scaffold up, pull down the all existing under balconies, of which I think there was about, depending on where it was, there was maybe 4 or 5 under balcony speakers, and then put the new D&B up, fit it all off, test it, commission, and get it operational before the next weekend's football.
Using one Amplify platform was the efficient, logical thing to do. D&B makes a lot of products. Being able to choose from a few different 8-inch two-ways, which have different dimensions and form factors, is really helpful in delivering the performance we're after, but choosing a product that meets the architectural demands. I guess it would have been most people's experience of Q-Sys of that scale first time round. We'd never used it to that scale before. It was the obvious choice. There wasn't a moment where we thought, what are our options here? So from a design point of view, our engagement was entirely with Ewan McDonald from TAG Sydney. He made the whole process clear, informative. He took the risk out of it. If ever there was something he was in any way nervous about, he would say it, and he would say, let me get back to you, and he'd come back to you. And I don't think there was once when he said, we can't quite do that. The programming team on the Rutledge side were also fantastically good. They went to a lot of effort, not just to deliver what was needed according to the words of the specification, but working with the operations team to develop a user interface that worked for them.
You know, the beauty of Q-Sys is its compliance with the emergency standards. And so that was obviously one of the requirements around trying to get the stadium as close as possible to an evacuation system as such. The Q-Sys, really has all that flexibility and it can talk to the D&B as far as the monitoring goes. But it also gave the guys a lot of flexibility in their front end user interface to be able to create scheduled paging and pre-scheduled messages, all those sort of things. So we've got quite a complex control system for them now. Mind you, they haven't really had a lot of chance to test it and put it through its paces yet, because I think they've had the Women's World Cup final earlier this year, and that's about it. It's interesting that we will probably be doing some work around this project next year when they're finally able to play football there again.
I think we got to the point where the MCG has exactly what they saw the outcome of this in their hands. They're really excited about the day they can throw the doors open again and fill the place full of people.